What's up guys, Matt Laidlaw here, coming to you from the oldest, largest, and finest Harley-Davidson dealership in the greater Los Angeles area, Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So today I'm going to be comparing two bikes that I get asked a lot of questions about, and it's requested of me quite often to talk about these two bikes and how they compare. So that is the 2018 Softail Heritage and the 2018 Road King Standard. So I'm going to be taking these bikes out with Andrew and we're going to ride them both back to back, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on the pros and cons of each of these and how they match up in different areas of riding. So I get asked a lot of questions about which bike is better for any particular customer, a Heritage or a Road King. It's usually a customer that's between these two bikes is someone who wants a bike that has storage space, that is going to go on a little bit longer trip. Maybe you're more of a day tripper, overnight tripper, and you're trying to figure out which of these two bikes is going to work best for you. A lot of times people will just look at the weight and the seat height and try to make a determination based on their personal size, like their height and their weight. And if they're a smaller stature person, they'll go with the Heritage. If they're a bigger stature person, they'll go with the Road King. That is actually a mistake, guys, and I'll tell you why. And that criteria can kind of be a small percentage of how you make your ultimate decision, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just those two factors, just your height and weight. So hopefully I can clear up some of this. And this question is kind of getting reintroduced to me a lot lately because the new frame on these 2018 Softails is a lot more capable, especially out on the highway, than the old Softail chassis. So I feel like these bikes are even a better matchup as far as a distance, high-speed cruiser type motorcycle. But hopefully I can kind of clarify, by giving you kind of some pros and cons on these two models, which would be best suited for you. And if you're thinking about getting a Heritage, I would strongly recommend watching my full review video on the Heritage. And I did a full review video on the 2017 Road King, which is basically the exact same bike as the 2018 model year. So watch those two videos as well if you're between these two bikes. And usually the people that are in between these two bikes are people that don't want a fairing on the front. They want a capable, like maybe overnighter, decent long trip, maybe going down the highway several hundred miles. That type of riding, people want these types of bikes, but don't necessarily want a fairing on there. So if you want the clean front end, but you want a touring capable bike, these are the bikes that usually people fall into that niche of looking at. So just a couple pieces of information about the Heritage. First of all, you can get it in both a 107 and a 114 configuration this year. And Harley did make a brand new frame as well. If you haven't watched my the new 2018 Softail chassis revealed video, definitely watch that. I go into a lot of detail about all the specifics on the new Softails. So I'll put a card to that as well, linking that video in the top right hand corner here. So basically in a nutshell, guys, and hopefully this clears it up, and I'm going to expound on this a little bit more. The Road King for high speed, long distance traveling is still a better bike than the Heritage. If you're going consistently 75 miles an hour or more down the highway, or 65 miles an hour or more down the highway for a long duration, the Road King is still a more comfortable bike. It's just the frame and the suspension It's just a smoother with the rubber mount engine. It's just a smoother, more relaxed ride than the Heritage. So if I had to choose a bike to go across, the United States coast to coast on, I would definitely pick the Road King. Now I would do it on the Heritage, and the Heritage is going to do just great. But the Road King is a better suited open highway long distance bike. Now the Heritage is going to be a lot better handling, playful, better power to weight ratio bike than the Road King. So your acceleration is going to be better. Your braking distance is going to be shorter. The just going out of turns, it's just going to be a more playful handling bike with the Heritage than the Road King. The Road King still has a little bit of that UPS truck top heavy feel to it. So yeah, it's just going to feel kind of like a big boat going down the road. But the new touring chassis that came out in 2009, it's not really new anymore, but the touring chassis that came out in 2009 combined with the Rushmore project changes in 2014, the touring bikes actually handle extremely well for their weight. You can put these things through the canyons and still have a lot of fun through the canyons. The old touring bikes pre-09, they're kind of dogs through the canyons. But if you are a canyon type rider that likes to ride more aggressively, then I would definitely recommend the Heritage. The Heritage and the Fat Bob are my two favorite Softails in the new 2018 Softail lineup. So basically, in a nutshell, guys, if you're someone who wants to ride real aggressively, especially in and out of turns, and wants something with real good power to weight ratio that's a lighter handling bike, the Heritage is a better fit for you. If you're a big guy, or even if you're not a big guy, but if you're going to be doing long stretches of highway at high speeds for long durations, the Road King is going to be better. So the Softail is hard mounted to the frame. The engine is hard mounted to the frame, and there's an additional counterbalancer in this new Milwaukee 8 when compared to the Milwaukee 8 in the touring bikes. And it's very smooth, but once you get up to real high RPMs, if you're out, on the road, doing high speed, 75 miles an hour plus, there is a little bit more of the buzzing vibration that will transfer up to the handlebars, which isn't a big deal, and most of the time you won't feel it except for at the real higher RPMs. But after hours and hours in the saddle, that all kind of adds up, and it's just one more little thing that makes the Softail chassis not as good as the touring bike chassis out on the road. So hope this kind of clears it up. I'm going to be going into a little bit more details here with some statistics as far as the power goes, and I'm going to be taking these bikes out on a road test, and I'm going to communicate to you guys a little bit of what Andrew thought as well. That and the touring saddlebags are bigger as well, so you have a little bit more storage capacity in there. But if you're a guy that is maybe coming from the sport bike world and you like a little bit more power and you like a little bit more acceleration, and you've always been kind of hesitant to move into the Harley world because you feel like the Harleys just don't have enough pep in their step, then you might want to consider the Softails, because they're a real fun, great power to weight ratio cruiser bike. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people use the size of the rider as kind of like the number one criteria to determine whether you get a Road King or a Heritage. And like I said before, that's a pretty big mistake. I will say that if you're like a really big rider, like let's say you're like 6'5" and you're 250 plus pounds, you're pretty much going to want to go with the Road King in all cases. But what I find is sometimes people that maybe haven't ridden Harley-Davidsons in the past, and maybe they can't touch with flat-footed on a Road King, they'll immediately go to a Heritage just because they feel more comfortable on the showroom floor. You might be making a big mistake. It might be a better option for you to get a lowered seat, a reduced to reach seat for the Road King if you plan on doing more, real long rides, hundreds of miles in a day out on the road, overnight trips with the passenger on the back. You might still want to get the Road King instead. But let me kind of go down a list of the different features on these two bikes and how they can compare to each other, and what my opinion is on the benefits of all of these things. But basically, in a nutshell, my first point: don't get a Heritage just because it feels better on the showroom floor, or just because you feel like your size is better suited for the Heritage. Now, I'm not saying rule that criteria out completely, but don't rule out a Road King just because you're more flat-footed on a Heritage and it feels a little bit lighter when you're shaking it back and forth on the showroom floor. That's all I'm saying. So the third thing here is the Softails. They are a lot better, more capable touring bikes now than they have been in the past. So the Heritage and the Fat Bob both have a taller shock on them. So because of that, the seat height is a little bit taller than most of the other bikes. But as a result, the ride comfort is a lot better. And I noticed that immediately out on the freeway. So the ride comfort's very good on these Softails. It's probably 20 times better than the old Softails. But like I said before, it's still not as good as the Road King shocks. But I would say, like, the Street Glides and the Road Glides and the Road King Special that have the lowered shocks, I would say it's pretty comparable, actually. The ride on the Heritage. Now, the fairings on the Road King and the Street Glide, they add a whole nother blanket or layer of comfort with the wind deflection. But I'm talking about just actual shock absorption, I think these new mono shocks, especially the taller one, the Heritage and the Fat Bob, do a little bit better job than the touring bikes that are lowered. And when I say lowered, the factory lowered, like the Street Glide and the Road Glide and the Road King Special. But anyways, yeah, both of them, they've got really good options for tour packs and backrests as well. With the new introduction of the 2018 Softails, they introduced what's called the Hold Fast system, and they just have a lot of really good options for clip-on passenger backrests and additional seats. A lot of seats that you can switch independently of the rider seat, so the rider and the passenger seat can be switched independently of one another. You can also get a rider backrest if you purchase the hammock seat for the Heritage. So if you were to get the hammock seat and the rider backrest for this thing, it would be very, very comfortable touring bike. But the touring bikes have a little bit more options as far as the rider backrest, because a lot of the seats have that slit between the rider and the passenger seat that allow you to slip the rider backrest in there. And everything is just a little bit bigger too. Like, your options for your passenger backrest and your rider backrest, everything is just a little bit bigger, which adds more comfort as well, especially if you're on the larger side. And for the record, guys, when I say larger, I'm basically speaking about people that are like 6 feet or taller and about 220 pounds and bigger. So anyways, yeah, Harley's been really good about introducing a lot of good options with seating and backrests on these new Softails. So while we're out on the freeway, I'll just comment a little bit about the ride quality and how these two bikes compare to each other. So the Heritage, the windshield's not as big, so I did get more wind turbulence on the Heritage than I did the Road King. And weight at high speeds, it can actually be your friend. And I know a lot of people are going to argue with me and complain about this comment, but when you're going down the road at 75 miles an hour and you've got trucks passing you and everything, additional weight just helps you feel more planted on the road, and you're just less affected by the high winds. On the Heritage at high speeds, for me, I just felt a little bit more turbulence. I didn't feel as connected with the road, although it wasn't bad. I felt real confident out there as I was going over bumps and things at high speeds. But I just wasn't as just real calm and relaxed ride as I had on the Road King. But the power, roll-on power when I'm doing 75, if I'm getting to 65 to 80 miles an hour, the Heritage is a lot peppier, especially with this 114. You're gonna feel just better, more roll-on power at higher RPMs. So that was definitely nice. And while I'm talking about windshields and wind buffeting, sometimes I get asked the question, well, does a windshield deflect the wind as well as a fairing, like on a street glide or a road glide? And that answer is definitely no. The wind deflection you get from the Batwing and the shark nose fairing on both those bikes is a lot better than the windshield. You don't get as much as like the side buffeting and even the head buffeting, especially with the new fairings that came out on the touring bikes in the 2014 model year with Project Rushmore, and on the road glide that was in the 15 model year. You really just have you don't have as much of that turbulence constantly jarring your head, and the windshields make it 80% better than not having anything at all, but it's still not as smooth as having a fairing with the proper height windshield on there. So that's another thing to kind of consider if you're looking at a Road King or this bike and maybe a street glide or road glide. The fairing bikes do deflect the wind more efficiently, especially if you add a little bit taller windshield on those bikes as well. A couple other little small things that I'll mention as well. The Heritage comes with all the LED lighting. And here I am with the cruise control on. Both these bikes come with the cruise control. The only two Softails that come with cruise control from the factory are the Heritage and the Sport Glide. The cruise control works really, really well. It's electronic now. It has been for years. And both of these bikes ride really straight. You can see me there for a minute on the Heritage. With these new frames, they just track a lot straighter and a lot better, even at high speeds. And the Road King does as well. But going back to the lighting, the Softails all come with LED lighting, really good lights. In fact, on my street glide that I just bought this year, I basically bought all the lights that come on the Heritage and put them on my street glide. The fitment's the same. So it's a new style of LED light that Harley-Davidson just came out this year, and I really like the style. And so that's a definite advantage you get on the Heritage over the Road King, as the lighting is definitely better than the halogen lights that come on the Road King. The Road King also comes with the two engine guards and the saddlebag guards, as you can see here in these shots. And that's kind of nice. As you can see, the Heritage doesn't have either. So if, heaven forbid, you were to drop your bike or fall over or whatever, it's going to be a lot better protected than the Heritage would. The other thing is, I'm a real big fan of the highway pegs as well. So I have highway pegs mounted up on my engine guard, which is nice to stretch out, especially for us taller guys. And ABS, I will say ABS comes standard on the Heritage. On the Road King, it's an additional $795, as well as the security. The security's an extra $395, and on the Heritage it comes standard. So I feel like you get a little bit more value with the Heritage, because the base price of a Heritage and a Road King are about the same. It's like $20,000. But if you want them comparably equipped, the Road King is going to cost you more. The Road King has a 6-gallon tank. The Heritage has a 5-gallon tank. I love having a 6-gallon tank, I'll fully admit. Although it was interesting. I took a ride up to Monterey with a bunch of my friends, and some of you may have seen Jamie's Heritage. Jamie bought one of these Heritage, these new 2018 Softail Heritages, and when we were going up the coast and we were kind of doing gas checks, and Jamie's definitely lighter than I am, but he was getting close to the same total range on his bike that I was getting on my street glide. And I probably had, with luggage and my body weight, I don't know, I would guess an extra 60 pounds or something like that. So I did have more weight, and the street glide is about 100 pounds heavier than the Softail as well, but we were both getting about the same total range. So the weight makes a big difference in how much gas is used to move these things down the road. But that extra gallon in the touring bikes is definitely nice, that I like. Going to the clutch, the Road King has a hydraulic clutch. All these touring bikes since the 2014 model year, Project Rushmore, have the hydraulic clutch. The Softail still have a cable clutch. The clutch is really nice on these new Softails though, and I really don't prefer one real dramatically over another. I do like the hydraulic clutches better. I just feel like they're smoother actuation. It's more of a predictable pull and friction zone, but I don't really prefer it that much more over the cable clutch on the Softail. So that's kind of just a minor detail for me. As far as the wheels go, you got mag wheels on the Road King. I prefer the mags over the spokes. Spokes are a cool classic style that a lot of guys like and they go for, but me personally, I prefer the look of a mag wheel. So that's just kind of a small point for me as well. The stock seats, the one on the Road King is more comfortable in my opinion, and that goes for the passenger one especially. The passenger seat on the Road King is a lot more plush and wider, so your passenger is going to be more comfortable back there. Again, there are several seats that you can purchase for both of these bikes, the hammock seat being the best, the sundowner seat being kind of a second best. It's not quite as costly. The Heritage, I do like the styling this year. I really like the blacked out look. I got a comment the other day from somebody that says they absolutely ruined the Heritage and he hates it and it's not even a classic bike anymore. So styling is just kind of an opinion, and so I won't really say one's better than the other, but I like the badging and the emblems on the Heritage a little bit better.
Which one do you like better?
I do prefer a hard painted bag over the leather bags. That and the Road King bags are bigger. You can fit more of your stuff in there. This year they did make the bags on the Heritage lockable, which is very nice. In years past, I pretty much hated the Heritage bags, especially more than 10 years old bags. They got saggy. There are a bunch of aftermarket companies that made these anti-saggy bags for the Heritage because if you didn't take care of them, they would get droopy and they just look like crap. Now, they've got like a plastic molding liner in there, so that they're never going to droop on you. But I'm still more just a painted hard bag type of guy. From that standpoint, I kind of prefer the Road King as well. But really, in a nutshell, guys, going back to my main points, if you're going to be riding mostly freeway stuff, the Road King is going to be a better bike for you, especially if you're riding with a passenger. If you want to get aggressive and ride real hard and go through the turns with better handling and agility and have better acceleration and power to weight ratio, then the Softail is going to be a better bike for you. And there's a lot of other things that go into it, but that, in my opinion, is probably the biggest question you should ask yourself when you're looking at these two bikes. So let's start with the Heritage 114 here. So stock horsepower, you're at about 85 horsepower. That's to the rear wheel. And if you want to move over to the 114 Milwaukee 8 Softail torque, which is the dotted white line, you're just shy of about 110 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000 RPM. You get your max horsepower, like I said, about 85 horsepower, and that comes on about 4,500 RPM. So, yeah, that's the power for the Milwaukee 8 114 and a Softail. So let's jump down now to the 107 in a touring chassis bike. So this would be what's on the 2018 Road King. So you're looking at about 5,000 RPM. You're looking at 80 rear wheel horsepower. And then coming over to the torque here, you're looking at maybe just over 100 foot-pounds of torque. So like 102, 103 foot-pounds of torque. So you got about 5 more horsepower on the Softail 114, and you got about 8 or 9 foot-pounds of torque on the 114 as well. So you're going to get about 10% more power approximately, but with the added weight decrease on the Softail, you're going to have a more pronounced acceleration and a lot better power to weight ratio in the 114 Heritage than you will on the Road King. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I always try to get back to people. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and liking it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I come out with a lot of Harley-Davidson content, and so subscribe so you can get notifications when my future content comes out. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.